The morning sun hadn't yet cleared the Bradshaw Mountains when Margaret Sullivan turned the key in the back door of the Copper Cup Diner. The lock clicked with the same familiar resistance it had shown for 35 years. Some mornings Maggie swore the old brass mechanism recognized her touch. Other mornings like this one in late October, it felt like even the door knew she was going through motions more than living through moments. The hinges creaked their greeting. The smell of yesterday's coffee and fryer oil wrapped around her like an old coat. Maggie stepped into the kitchen and let the door swing shut behind her. 5:45 in the morning, right on schedule. She had been right on schedule for 35 years. The kitchen waited in darkness. Maggie's hand found the light switch without looking. Fluorescent tubes flickered to life overhead, humming their electric song. Stainless steel counters caught the harsh light. The grill sat cold and clean. Everything exactly where it should be. Everything exactly where it had been yesterday. And the day before that. And the day before that. Maggie hung her purse on the hook by the prep station. Her cardigan followed. The movements were automatic. Muscle memory carved by 3.5 decades of opening this diner alone. Well, not always alone. Once there had been Patrick, and before the cancer took Patrick, there had been Tommy. She stopped at the counter where she kept the register. Next to the cash drawer sat a small framed photograph. The frame was silver tarnished at the edges despite her regular polishing. The photo showed a boy of 8 with a gap-toothed smile and eyes that crinkled at the corners when he laughed. Thomas Patrick Sullivan, Tommy, her son, dead 20 years this past August. Maggie's fingers touched the glass over Tommy's face. The ritual was the same every morning. Touch the photo, remember the laugh. Feel the hollow space in her chest where a mother's heart was supposed to sit whole and unbroken. Then get to work because the dead stayed dead and the living had bills to pay. The coffee maker gurgled to life. While it brewed, Maggie began her prep work. Eggs from the walk-in, bacon from the cooler, potatoes for hash browns. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency. This was the blessing of routine. You could do it without thinking, and when you didn't think, you didn't remember. Except Maggie always remembered. She cracked eggs into a bowl, 18 of them. The shells made soft crunching sounds as they broke. Outside, Prescott was beginning to wake. A truck rumbled past on Montezuma Street. Somewhere a dog barked, the world turning like it always did, indifferent to grief, relentless in its insistence that life continued whether you wanted it to or not. Patrick used to say she worked too hard. He'd said it right up until the day the stroke took him 15 years ago. Came home from his shift at the hardware store, sat down in his recliner to watch the evening news, and never got back up. Just like that. No warning. No goodbye. The same way Tommy had slipped away in that hospital bed 2 decades back, his small hand going limp in hers, while machines beeped their useless alerts. Maggie whisked the eggs harder than necessary. The fork scraped against the bowl. Stop it, she told herself. Stop living in the past. But the past was all she had. The past in this diner and the endless march of days that all looked exactly the same. By 6:15, the coffee was ready and the grill was heating. Maggie poured herself a cup, black, no sugar. She took it to the front window and looked out at Courthouse Plaza. The old Yavapai County Courthouse sat solid and imposing in the pre-dawn light. A few early risers were already crossing the plaza. Joggers, people walking dogs. Prescott waking up to another ordinary Wednesday. Ordinary. That was the word for Maggie's life now. Ordinary and empty and so predictable, she could write the script for the next 20 years without pause. Open the diner, serve the breakfast crowd, clean up, serve lunch, clean up, close, go upstairs to her apartment, microwave something, watch television without seeing it, go to bed, wake up, do it all again. She finished her coffee. The trash needed to go out before the morning rush. Maggie grabbed the bag from the bin by the prep station and hauled it toward the back door. It wasn't heavy, just the usual debris from yesterday's service. Coffee grounds and napkins and food waste. The detritus of feeding a town that barely noticed the woman doing the feeding. The back door opened onto an alley that ran between Montezuma and Cortez Streets. Most people never saw this alley. It was the hidden spine of downtown Prescott, where delivery trucks came and businesses kept their dumpsters, and the unglamorous work of keeping a town running happened out of sight. Maggie had been taking trash to this alley for 35 years. She knew every crack in the pavement, every stain on the brick walls, every sound that belonged and every sound that didn't. This morning there was a sound that didn't belong. Maggie froze with the trash bag in her hand, her ears strained against the ambient noise of the waking town. There, again, a small sound, soft, almost like a whimper, like an animal in pain. She set the trash bag down and walked toward the dumpster. The sound was coming from inside it. Maggie's heart began to pound. Please not a dog, she thought. Please not some poor creature trapped and suffering. She'd heard stories about raccoons and cats getting stuck in dumpsters. The thought of it made her stomach turn. The dumpster's lid was partially open. Maggie grabbed the edge and lifted it fully. The hinges squealed. Morning light spilled into the interior, and what Maggie saw made the world stop turning. Curled in the corner of the dumpster, nestled among black garbage bags and discarded cardboard boxes, was a child. A boy. Small, maybe 8 years old, maybe younger. It was hard to tell because he was folded in on himself like a broken bird. His clothes were filthy, a thin jacket that looked 2 sizes too small, jeans with holes in the knees, and his feet. God, his feet were bare and dirty and covered in what looked like blisters. The boy's eyes opened. Blue eyes, impossibly blue. The kind of blue that reminded Maggie of summer skies and swimming pools and everything clean and innocent in the world. Eyes that should have been looking at teaser playgrounds or mothers' faces, not staring out from a pile of garbage with the flat affect of someone who had stopped expecting anything good. Those eyes met Maggie's. And in that instant, the 20 years collapsed. The grief she had carefully compartmentalized and buried under routine and stoicism came roaring back. Because those eyes, those blue eyes in that small face, they were Tommy's eyes. Maggie's hand flew to her mouth. A sound escaped her throat. Part gasp, part sob. She stood frozen, staring at this impossible thing. This child in her dumpster. This ghost made flesh. The boy didn't move. He just watched her with those blue eyes, waiting, the way prey waits for a predator to decide whether to strike or move on. There was no hope in his expression, no plea for help, just acceptance, as if being found in a dumpster by a stranger was exactly what he expected from life. "Oh, God," Maggie's voice cracked. "Oh, sweetheart. Oh, no." She reached toward him. The boy flinched, drew himself tighter into his corner. Maggie pulled her hand back. "I'm not going to hurt you." Her voice came out too loud, too sharp. She tried again, softer. "I'm not going to hurt you, honey, I promise. My name is Maggie. What's yours?" The boy's lips pressed together. He didn't speak. Maggie looked around the alley as if expecting someone to appear and explain this, as if there was some rational reason for a child to be sleeping in her trash. The alley was empty, just brick walls and pavement, and the distant sounds of Prescott waking up. How long had he been here? How many people had walked past this alley? How many had heard something and kept walking? The questions made Maggie's chest tight with something that felt like anger and shame mixed together. This was her town, her alley, and a child had been sleeping in her garbage while the world went about its business. "Are you hungry?" Maggie asked. The boy's eyes flickered. Something moved behind that flat expression. A crack in the armor. "I bet you are. I bet you're very hungry." Maggie kept her voice low and gentle, the voice she used to use with Tommy when he was scared. "I own the diner right here, the one behind me. I can make you breakfast. Anything you want. Pancakes. Do you like pancakes?" The boy's throat moved as he swallowed. Still, he didn't speak. "How about this?" Maggie took a step back from the dumpster, put space between them, non-threatening. "How about you climb out of there and come inside with me? Just for a little while. I'll make you some food and we can talk. If you don't like it, you can leave. No tricks, no traps, just breakfast and a warm place to sit." "Okay." For a long moment, the boy didn't move. Maggie could see him thinking, calculating risks, weighing trust against hunger. It broke her heart that a child this young had to make such calculations. Then slowly, painfully, the boy began to uncurl. His movements were stiff, like someone who had been in one position too long, or someone whose body hurt. He pushed himself up to his knees, then his feet. Maggie could see him better now. He was thin, not just thin, malnourished. His cheeks were hollow, his wrists like sticks poking out from his jacket sleeves. The boy climbed out of the dumpster with the careful movements of someone navigating pain. When his bare feet hit the pavement, he winced. Maggie saw the blisters up close now, raw and infected. This child had walked far, walked until his feet bled. "Come on, sweetie." Maggie gestured toward the back door of the diner. "Let's get you inside." The boy took one step, then another. He moved like a feral cat, ready to bolt at any sudden movement. Maggie led him slowly through the back door and into the kitchen. The fluorescent light seemed harsh after the dim alley. The boy squinted against the brightness. Maggie pulled out a stool by the prep counter. "Sit down, take the weight off those feet." The boy climbed onto the stool. He sat with his back straight and his hands folded in his lap, perfectly still, waiting for whatever came next. Maggie wanted to cry. Instead, she went to work. First things first. She grabbed a clean dish towel and she ran it under warm water. Then she knelt in front of the stool and gently lifted one of the boy's feet. He tensed but didn't pull away. Maggie cleaned the dirt and dried blood as carefully as she could. The blisters were worse than they looked. Some had burst, some were infected. This child needed medical attention. But first he needed food and warmth and someone to see him as a person instead of a problem. There. Maggie finished cleaning his feet and stood up. "That must feel better." The boy looked at his cleaned feet. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, as if kindness was so foreign he didn't know how to process it. Maggie moved to the grill. Her hands were shaking, but she kept them busy. Pancake batter from the cooler, a ladle to pour. The grill hissed as the batter hit the hot surface. The smell of cooking filled the kitchen. Comfort food, the universal language of care. "What's your name, honey?" Maggie asked as she worked. For a long moment's silence, then a voice so quiet she almost missed it. "Tyler." Maggie's hands stilled over the grill. The boy had a name. Tyler. "Tyler. That's a good name, a strong name." She flipped the pancakes. "How old are you, Tyler?" Another pause. 8. 8. The same age Tommy had been. The same age as the boy in the photo on her counter. Maggie blinked hard against the tears threatening to spill. 8 is a good age. She kept her voice steady. "I had a son who was 8 once, long time ago." She piled the pancakes on a plate, added butter, syrup, set it in front of Tyler along with a fork and a glass of orange juice. The boy stared at the food like it might disappear if he looked away. "Go ahead," Maggie said gently. "Eat." Tyler picked up the fork. His hand trembled. He cut a piece of pancake and lifted it to his mouth. For a second, he just held it there. Then he bit down. His eyes closed. And Maggie watched something break in him. The wall he'd built to survive. The armor that kept him from feeling. It cracked. Just a little. Just enough. He ate like someone who hadn't seen food in days. Probably because he hadn't. Maggie stood back and let him. She didn't ask questions, didn't push. Just let this broken child fill his empty stomach in peace. When the plate was clean, Tyler looked up at her. His eyes were wet. "Thank you," he whispered. "You're welcome, sweetheart." Maggie's throat was tight. "You want more?" Tyler shook his head. His stomach probably couldn't handle more. Not yet. "Okay, how about we get you cleaned up a little? Maybe find you some better clothes." Before Tyler could answer, the sound of motorcycle engines filled the alley. Deep rumbling thunder that shook the windows. Maggie's head turned toward the back door. She knew that sound, knew it well. The engines cut off one by one. Maggie heard boots on pavement, voices calling to each other. Then a knock on the back door. "Maggie," a man's voice, rough but familiar. "Everything all right in there?" Maggie looked at Tyler. The boy had gone rigid on his stool, fear bright in his eyes. "It's okay," Maggie said quickly. "That's Marcus. He's a friend, a good friend. He won't hurt you." She opened the back door. Standing in the alley was Marcus Castellano, all 6'3" of him. Leather vest over a worn denim shirt, gray beard reaching his chest. Tattoos covering both arms in intricate designs that told stories Maggie only half understood. Behind him, filling the alley like a leather-clad army, were 74 more men and women wearing the same vest, the same patches. Hell's Angels. Prescott at chapter. Marcus's weathered face creased with concern. We were riding through, heard something in the alley. Thought maybe someone was in trouble. Someone is. Maggie stepped aside so Marcus could see Tyler sitting on the stool. I found him in my dumpster. Marcus's expression changed instantly. The casual concern hardened into something fierce and protective. He stepped into the kitchen, his boots heavy on the tile. Behind him, Ray Collins and young Beckett Malone followed. The rest of the club stayed in the alley engines, silent waiting. Jesus Christ. Ray's scarred face twisted. A kid. Marcus moved slowly toward Tyler. He was a big man, intimidating to most people, but he moved with the careful precision of someone who understood how threatening he could appear. He stopped a few feet from the stool and lowered himself to one knee, putting his eyes level with Tyler's. Hey there. Marcus's voice came out surprisingly gentle, a low rumble that somehow managed to sound safe. My name's Marcus. What's yours? Tyler looked at Maggie. She nodded encouragement. Tyler, the boy said so quiet Marcus had to lean in to hear. Tyler, good to meet you. Marcus didn't reach out to shake hands, didn't crowd the boy's space. Maggie here is a friend of mine, has been for about 20 years. She's good people, best person I know actually. You're safe with her. You're safe with all of us. I promise you that. Tyler's eyes darted to the other bikers visible through the open door. 75 of them, all leather and denim and chrome, all watching. The boy's small frame seemed to shrink. I know we look scary, Marcus continued. People cross the street when they see us coming. But here's the thing, Tyler. We take care of our own, and Maggie's our own, which means anyone Maggie cares about, we care about. You understand? Tyler's blue eyes searched Marcus's face, looking for the lie, the threat, the catch. But Marcus just waited, patient, open, honest. Where are your parents, son? Marcus asked gently. Tyler's face closed off, his lips pressed into a thin line. Maggie stepped forward. Tyler, honey, we need to know. Where's your mama, your daddy? For a long moment, Tyler said nothing. Then his voice came out, broken and small. My mom died last month. The words hit the kitchen like physical things. Maggie felt them in her chest, felt them in the hollow place where Tommy used to live. And your father, Marcus asked, his voice even softer now. Never met him. Any other family grandparents, aunts or uncles? Tyler shook his head. Mom said it was just us two. Maggie's hand went to her mouth. This child, this boy with Tommy's eyes. He'd been alone for a month, alone and in walking and sleeping in garbage, while the world went about its business. Marcus stood up slowly. He turned to look at Maggie. Something passed between them. An understanding built on 2 decades of friendship. Marcus had been there when Tommy died, had been one of the pallbearers at the funeral, had checked on Maggie every week for a year after making sure she ate, making sure she kept going. He knew what she'd lost, and he could see in her face what she was thinking now. What happened after your mom died, Tyler? Maggie knelt beside the stool. Where have you been staying? Nowhere, everywhere. Tyler's voice was barely audible. The lady at our apartment said I had to leave, said she was going to call someone, so I left. You've been on the streets for a month, Ray's voice cracked with anger. Not at Tyler, at the world. I walked mostly, at night, hid during the day. People don't like kids alone. They ask questions, try to help, but help means they take you away. Tyler looked at Maggie with those devastating blue eyes. I don't want to go to a home where they don't want me. I heard my mom talk about those places. Kids get moved around. Nobody really cares. Maggie felt something break open in her chest, something that had been locked shut for 20 years. This child, this brave, broken child, had chosen sleeping in garbage over trusting the system meant to protect him. How far did you walk, Tyler? Marcus asked. From Phoenix. The room went silent. Phoenix to Prescott was over 100 miles. Through high desert. Through October nights that dropped below freezing. This 8-year-old boy had walked 100 miles. Marcus turned to face the open door. The rest of the club stood in the alley, their faces visible through the doorway. 74 people who looked like society's nightmares, who wore their outsider status like armor, who'd been judged and dismissed their entire lives for how they looked instead of who they were. How many people walked past this alley in the last month? Marcus's voice carried through the kitchen and out to the club. How many heard something and kept walking? How many told themselves it wasn't their problem? Nobody answered. They all knew the truth. Marcus turned back to Tyler, then to Maggie, then to his club. This boy has been sleeping in garbage while Prescott went about its business. He's 8 years old, 8. And he chose a dumpster over the safety net this country supposedly provides for children. Ray stepped forward. His scarred face was set in grim lines. "What are you thinking, Marcus?" Marcus looked at Maggie, really looked at her. And Maggie knew what he was asking without words. "Are you sure? Are you ready? Can you do this?" Maggie looked at Tyler, at his blue eyes and hollow cheeks and blistered feet, at the way he sat perfectly still, waiting for the adults to decide his fate. The way Tommy used to sit in that hospital bed so brave and so small, waiting for Maggie to tell him everything would be okay even when they both knew it wouldn't. And Maggie made a decision. The first real decision she'd made in 20 years that wasn't about maintaining routine or managing grief. A decision that came from somewhere deep and primal and fiercely maternal. She stood up, faced Marcus, faced the club members visible in the doorway, faced Tyler, and said the words that would change everything. "This boy is staying with me." The kitchen went still. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Maggie, I have a spare room." Her voice gained strength as she spoke. "I have time. I have a business. I have—" She paused, swallowed. "I have love to give. I lost my son 20 years ago. I've been half dead ever since. But this boy," she gestured to Tyler, "this brave, strong boy who walked 100 miles because he was too scared to trust anyone. He needs someone. And maybe," her voice cracked, "maybe I need him too." Marcus studied her face. "You know what you're asking for, the legal fight this will be." "I know. You can't just take him, Maggie. There are laws, procedures, child protective services." "Then we follow the procedures. We fight the fight. But Tyler is not going back into that dumpster. He's not going to some group home where he's just a number. He's staying with me." Maggie's eyes blazed with something that had been missing for 2 decades. Purpose. "You boys helped me bury my husband. Helped me keep this diner running when I wanted to give up. Now I need you to help me save this child." Ray looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at the club members in the doorway. Something passed between them. A decision made without words. The way family decides things. "We're with you, Maggie," Marcus said. "Every one of us. Tyler here just got himself 75 bodyguards." Maggie felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't wipe them away. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet." Marcus pulled out his phone. "We need to do this right. Legal, or they'll take him anyway." Tyler had been watching this entire exchange with wide eyes. Now he spoke up, his voice small but clear. "You really want me to stay?" Maggie knelt beside his stool again. She took his small, dirty hand in hers. "I really do, sweetheart. If you'll have me." "Why?" Tyler asked. "The question children ask when they have learned the world doesn't give anything for free. You don't even know me." "Because when I opened that dumpster and saw you there, I saw my son, not replacing him, never replacing him, but honoring what he taught me, which is that every child deserves to be loved, to be safe, to be seen as precious." Maggie squeezed his hand. "And maybe because God's giving me a second chance, a chance to get it right this time." Tyler's lower lip trembled. "What if I'm bad at being a kid? What if I mess up?" "Oh, honey." Maggie pulled him into a hug. He was stiff at first, uncertain. Then slowly his thin arms wrapped around her neck, and he buried his face in her shoulder. "You could never mess this up. Never." Behind them, Marcus was on his phone. Maggie heard him speaking in low tones, making calls, setting things in motion. The club members in the alley had moved closer, forming a protective semicircle around the back door. Ray had disappeared somewhere. Beckett was texting furiously on his phone. Tyler pulled back from the hug. His face was wet with tears, but something in his expression had changed. The flat acceptance was gone. In its place was something fragile and new. Hope. "Can I stay here today?" he asked. "Just today?" "You can stay as long as you need to," Maggie said. "We'll figure out the rest." Marcus ended his call and turned to face them. "I've got a lawyer friend in Phoenix, Diane Mercer. She specializes in family law. She's getting in her car right now. Should be here in 2 hours. That fast? Maggie asked. I told her it was an emergency. She owes me a favor. Marcus crouched beside Tyler again. Tyler, we need to ask you some questions. About your mom, about where you've been. It might be hard to talk about, but we need to know everything so we can help you. Can you do that? Tyler looked at Maggie. She nodded encouragement. I'll be right here, she promised. Okay, Tyler said quietly. For the next hour, they pieced together Tyler's story. His mother had been sick for months. Some kind of cancer, no insurance, no family support. She'd held on as long as she could, working double shifts at a convenience store to keep their apartment. But the cancer won. It always did. Tyler had been with her when she died, in their apartment, alone, because they couldn't afford a hospital. The apartment manager had found them 3 days later when neighbors complained about the smell. She'd called the authorities. But in the chaos, Tyler had slipped away. He'd heard his mother talk about foster care, about the group homes where kids were shuffled from place to place, about how nobody really cared once you were in the system. So he ran. He'd walked, hitched a few rides in the backs of trucks when he could, ate from dumpsters, slept in doorways and under bridges, and finally in Maggie's trash bin behind the copper cup. He'd been there 3 nights before Maggie found him. 3 nights while Prescott slept and woke and went about its business. By the time Tyler finished his story, there were hardened bikers wiping their eyes in the alley. Ray had returned with clothes from the thrift store on Cortez Street. Beckett had called his sister, who worked at the urgent care clinic. Marcus was making more phone calls. And Maggie was holding Tyler's hand like she'd never let go. A car pulled up in the alley just after 9. A silver Toyota. The driver's door opened and a woman in a business suit stepped out. She was in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She carried a leather briefcase and moved with the confidence of someone who knew her way around courtrooms. Marcus met her at the door. Diane, thanks for coming. You said it was a child in crisis. Of course I came. Diane Mercer looked past Marcus into the kitchen. Her eyes landed on Tyler. Her professional mask slipped for just a second, revealing genuine concern. Is that him? That's Tyler Brennan, 8 years old, mother deceased, no other family, been living on the streets for a month. Diane set her briefcase on the prep counter and knelt in front of Tyler. Hello, Tyler. My name is Diane Mercer. I'm a lawyer. Do you know what that means? Tyler shook his head. It means I help people navigate the legal system, the laws and rules that govern how we live. And right now, you need someone to help you navigate those rules. Would it be all right if I asked you some questions? I already told them everything, Tyler said quietly. I know, and I'm going to need to hear it again. I know it's hard, but the more information I have, the better I can help you. Okay. Tyler looked at Maggie. She squeezed his hand. It's okay, sweetie. For the next 30 minutes, Diane questioned Tyler with gentle professionalism. She took notes, asked for details, clarified timeline. Then she turned to Maggie. Sauce, Sullivan, I understand you want to take custody of Tyler. I do. Whatever it takes. Diane's expression was sympathetic but realistic. You should know what you're up against. You're a single woman, 58 years old, with no recent child-rearing experience. The courts are going to scrutinize everything. Your finances, your living situation, your mental health history. I own this diner free and clear. I own the building. I have an apartment upstairs with 2 bedrooms. I'm financially stable, mentally sound, and I have... Maggie gestured to the bikers filling her kitchen and alley. Support. Diane looked at Marcus and the club members. A slight smile crossed her face. Unconventional support, but support nonetheless. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a legal pad. Here's what's going to happen. The state requires any child without a legal guardian to be placed in protective custody. That means Child Protective Services will be involved. They'll want to do a home study, background checks, interviews, the works. How long does that take? Maggie asked. Normally months, maybe a year. But in the meantime, Tyler would go into foster care or a group home. No, Maggie's voice was firm. That's not happening. Then we need to move fast. Get ahead of this. Diane was already writing. I can file for emergency temporary custody, Argue that Tyler has established a relationship with you and removing him would cause additional trauma. But we need CPS to agree, and they won't unless we can prove you can provide adequate care. Marcus stepped forward. What does adequate care look like? Safe home, stable income, character references, medical care for Tyler, school enrollment plans, proof of support system. Diane looked up from her notes. Can you provide all that? Yes, Maggie said without hesitation. Ray pulled out his phone. I'll start calling people for character references. Maggie's been feeding this town for 35 years. Half of Prescott owes her something. Beckett was already texting. My sister can see Tyler today. Full medical exam. Marcus nodded. We'll handle the rest, whatever she needs. Diane closed her notebook. Then here's the plan. I file for emergency custody this morning. But before that happens, CPS needs to be notified. They'll send a caseworker to assess the situation. Everything depends on that assessment. As if on cue, the sound of a police siren echoed from Montezuma Street. It grew louder, closer, then cut off abruptly in the alley. Car doors opened and closed. Footsteps approached the back door. A knock, then a familiar voice. Maggie, it's Officer Dawson. Got a call about a situation here. Maggie's heart sank. Someone had called the police. Of course they had. 75 motorcycles parked in an alley would draw attention. Marcus opened the door. Officer Michael Dawson stood in the threshold. He was 35, still young enough to remember working as a busboy in this very diner 15 years ago. Still young enough to remember Maggie's kindness when he was trying to work his way through community college. Mike looked past Marcus into the kitchen, took in the scene. 75 bikers, one small boy, one determined woman. His expression shifted through confusion to understanding to concern. Someone called about a disturbance, Mike said. But this doesn't look like a disturbance. It's not, Maggie said. It's a rescue. Mike stepped into the kitchen. He looked at Tyler, at the boy's cleaned feet and hollow cheeks in two small clothes. His cop's eyes saw everything. The story was written on Tyler's body. What's your name, son? Mike asked gently. Tyler. Where are your parents, Tyler? Mom's dead. Never had a dad. Mike's jaw tightened. He turned to Maggie. How long has he been here? I found him in my dumpster this morning. He's been on the streets for a month, since his mother died. Jesus. Mike ran a hand through his hair. Maggie, you know I have to call CPS. It's protocol. I know. Maggie stood up, faced him directly. But Mike, before you make that call, you need to know something. I'm not letting this boy go into the system. I'm taking custody, legal custody. We've already got a lawyer. We're filing emergency papers. Tyler is staying with me. Mike looked at her like he'd never seen her before. The quiet, grief-stricken woman who'd served him coffee for 15 years was gone. In her place stood someone fierce, someone with fire in her eyes. Maggie, it's not that simple. There are procedures, background checks, home studies. CPS has to approve any placement. Then they'll approve this one. Maggie didn't back down. Mike, you knew Tommy. You knew my son. You came to his funeral. You've seen what his death did to me. Well, I'm done being half alive. I'm done going through the motions. This boy needs someone, and I need to be that someone. So yes, call CPS, follow your procedures. But I'm telling you right now, Tyler is not spending another night anywhere but with me. Mike looked at Marcus. You're backing her on this. With everything we've got, Marcus said. Tyler's one of ours now. All 75 of us are invested in making this work. Mike shook his head, not in disagreement, in something like awe. You people are crazy. Maybe, Ray said from the doorway, but we're crazy enough to care. Where was everyone else when this kid was sleeping in garbage? Mike didn't have an answer for that. He pulled out his phone. I'm calling CPS, like I said, protocol, but... He looked at Maggie. I'm also going to recommend they approve emergency temporary placement with you. On the record. Thank you, Mike. Mike made the call, spoke in official tones about a minor child without guardians, a potential placement, a request for immediate assessment. When he hung up, he looked at Diane. They're sending a caseworker, Claire Winters. She'll be here within the hour. You've got that long to make your case. The next hour was controlled chaos. Ray came back with more clothes for Tyler and food from the grocery store. Beckett's sister arrived and examined Tyler in the back office, documenting his injuries and malnutrition. Diane prepped Maggie on what to say and what not to say. Marcus coordinated the club members, getting them to call in character references and line up community support. Tyler stayed close to Maggie through all of it. Every time she moved, his eyes tracked her, as if he was afraid she'd disappear if he looked away. Maggie understood. He'd lost everyone. Trust was the hardest thing in the world for him now. At 10:30, a white sedan pulled into the alley. The driver was a woman in her late 30s with kind eyes and tired shoulders. She carried a tablet and wore a county ID badge. Claire Winters, CPS caseworker. Claire took in the scene with professional assessment. 75 bikers, one diner owner, one small boy. She'd seen stranger things in her career, but not many. I'm Claire Winters with Child Protective Services. She addressed the room at large. I understand there's a minor child here who needs placement. That would be Tyler. Diane stepped forward with her lawyer voice. And before we go any further, you should know I'm filing for emergency temporary custody on behalf of Margaret Sullivan. We have medical records documenting Tyler's condition, character witnesses ready to testify, and a comprehensive care plan. Claire's eyebrows rose. You work fast. When a child's welfare is at stake, yes. Claire looked at Tyler. Her professional demeanor softened. Hi, Tyler. My name is Claire. Can we talk for a minute? Just you and me. Tyler looked at Maggie. She nodded. It's okay, sweetie. Tell her the truth. Claire and Tyler moved to a corner of the kitchen, spoke in low tones for several minutes. Maggie couldn't hear what they were saying, could only watch Tyler's body language, the way he kept glancing back at her, the way he nodded or shook his head at Claire's questions. When they finished, Claire returned to Maggie. Her expression was unreadable. Ms. Sullivan, Tyler tells me you found him this morning, fed him, cleaned his injuries, called in medical help and legal representation, all within 4 hours. That's impressive and concerning. Concerning how, Maggie asked, it's unusual for someone to become this invested this quickly in a child they just met. Claire's tone wasn't accusatory, just careful. I need to understand your motivation. Why are you doing this? Maggie took a breath. Here it was, the moment of truth. I had a son, Tommy. He died 20 years ago, leukemia. He was 8, same age as Tyler. Maggie's voice stayed steady. I've been not really living since then, going through motions, running this diner because it's what I know. But when I found Tyler in that dumpster this morning, something woke up in me, something I thought was dead. And I realized, maybe this is why I survived Tommy's death. Maybe God kept me here for this, to save this boy. Claire wrote something on her tablet. Ms. Sullivan, I have to ask, are you trying to replace your deceased son with Tyler? The question hung in the air. Maggie knew it was coming, knew it was the obvious concern. She chose her words carefully. No, Tyler isn't Tommy. He's his own person with his own story. But maybe I can love them both. Maybe there's room in a mother's heart for more than one child, even if one of them is gone. Maggie's eyes filled with tears. I'm not trying to replace my son. I'm trying to honor what he taught me, which is that life is precious, that love matters, that we show up for each other when it counts. Claire studied her face for a long moment. Then she turned to Tyler. Tyler, do you want to stay with Ms. Sullivan? Yes, Tyler said immediately. She's nice. She gave me food. She didn't yell or grab me. She just helped. Claire looked at Marcus and the assembled bikers. And all of you, you're supporting this arrangement. Every single one of us, Marcus said. Maggie's family, Tyler's family now too. We take care of family. Claire typed more notes. When she looked up, her expression was conflicted. Here's the situation. Normally, I'd have to place Tyler in emergency foster care pending a full investigation. That's protocol, but, she paused, there's a provision that allows for kinship placement in certain circumstances. If I can establish that Tyler has a meaningful relationship with you and that removing him would cause additional trauma. He's known her 4 hours, Diane said. How can that qualify as meaningful? Sometimes 4 hours is enough. Claire looked at Tyler. at the way he stood close to Maggie, the way his small hand had found hers. I've seen cases where blood relatives showed less care than what I'm seeing here, and Tyler's already been through tremendous trauma. Removing him from the first stable environment he's found, she trailed off. So what are you saying? Maggie asked, afraid to hope. I'm saying I'm going to recommend emergency temporary placement with you, pending a full home study and approval from my supervisor. But Ms. Sullivan, you need to understand, this is highly conditional. Any sign that Tyler isn't thriving, any indication of instability, and he'll be removed immediately. You'll have surprise visits, mandatory therapy sessions, background checks, the works. And at the end of all that, a judge will decide if this placement becomes permanent. That could take months, maybe a year. I understand, Maggie said, whatever it takes. Claire nodded. Then I'll make the recommendation. But her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her expression changed. My supervisor wants to talk to me. Now, give me a minute. She stepped outside to take the call. Through the window, Maggie could see her pacing, gesturing, speaking urgently. The conversation went on for several minutes. Finally, Claire came back inside, and her face told Maggie everything. My supervisor is Victoria Aldrich. She's not supportive of this placement. She wants Tyler in official foster care immediately pending full investigation. Why? Diane demanded. She thinks this situation is too irregular, too emotionally driven. She's worried about Ms. Sullivan's mental state, the grief, the attachment to a child who looks like her deceased son. She sees red flags. Red flags, Maggie's voice rose. I gave him food and safety. What's the red flag in that? The speed of your emotional investment, the unconventional support system. Claire gestured to the bikers. No offense to anyone here, but a motorcycle club isn't typically considered an appropriate support network for raising a child. Marcus stepped forward. With all due respect to your supervisor, we've raised millions of dollars for children's hospitals. We do toy runs for underprivileged kids every Christmas. We've built playgrounds and renovated youth centers. We're not criminals. We're citizens who happen to ride motorcycles. I know that. I've seen your community work. But my supervisor, she's by the book, and the book says this situation is irregular. Claire looked genuinely sorry. I'm recommending Tyler be placed in emergency foster care tonight. You can fight it in court, but for now, that's how it has to be. None, the word came from Tyler, small but fierce. Everyone turned to look at him. I'm not going. You can't make me. I'll run away again. Tyler, honey, Claire started. I mean it. Tyler's blue eyes blazed. I survived a month on the streets. I can do it again. I won't go to some home where nobody wants me. I'd rather sleep in the dumpster. Tyler, nobody's going to make you sleep in a dumpster, Claire said gently. Then let me stay with Miss Maggie. Maggie knelt beside him. Tyler, listen to me. If you run, they'll just find you and things will be worse. We have to play by their rules, just for now. Just until we can prove to them that you belong with me. But what if they never let me come back? Tyler's voice broke. What if I go to that foster home and they keep me there? Then I'll fight. Maggie took his hands. I'll fight every single day until I get you back. I promise you. I'm not giving up on you. Tyler looked at her with desperate hope. You promise? I promise. On my son's memory, I promise. Diane's phone rang. She answered it, listened, then her eyes widened. Hold on. She put the call on speaker. Say that again. A woman's voice came through the speaker. Professional, crisp. This is Judge Margaret Holloway's clerk. The judge has been made aware of the Tyler Brennan situation. She's ordering an emergency hearing for 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. All parties are to appear. The child is to remain in current placement pending the hearing. Claire's face went pale. Judge Holloway is intervening. How does she even know about this? Let's just say the judge has friends in the biker community, Marcus said with a slight smile. You called in a favor from a district judge. Claire looked between Marcus and Diane. I made a phone call to someone who made a phone call, Marcus said. Judge Holloway's brother is a member of our charter. When she heard about a kid sleeping in dumpsters while the system moved at bureaucratic speed, she decided to expedite things. Claire ran a hand through her hair. This is completely irregular. My supervisor is going to lose her mind. Your supervisor can take it up with a judge tomorrow, Diane said smoothly. Until then, the court has spoken. Tyler stays with Maggie. Claire looked at Tyler, then at Maggie, then at the room full of bikers who clearly weren't going anywhere. She made a decision. Fine, Tyler remains here tonight, under my supervision. I'll stay and do a preliminary home assessment. But tomorrow at that hearing, you better have everything in order. Because if Judge Holloway sides with CPS, Tyler goes into foster placement immediately. Understood. Understood, Maggie said. Claire looked at her tablet, then at the chaos of the diner kitchen. 75 bikers, one determined woman, one scared child. The whole situation was irregular, unusual, unprecedented. But sometimes Claire thought the irregular was exactly what was needed. All right, she said. Show me this apartment where Tyler will supposedly be living. Maggie led Claire upstairs while Diane made more calls and Marcus coordinated the club. Tyler stayed close to Maggie, his small hand gripping hers. Ray and Beckett followed, carrying the clothes and supplies they'd gathered. The apartment above the diner was modest, clean, a living room with worn furniture, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, one bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. Claire inspected everything with professional thoroughness, checked the smoke detectors, the locks on the windows, the cleanliness of the bathroom. Then she opened the door to the 2nd bedroom and stopped. The room was frozen in time. A child's room. Baseball trophies on shelves, model airplanes hanging from the ceiling, a bed with a quilt featuring cartoon characters, posters of long-retired athletes, everything covered in a fine layer of dust. This was Tommy's room, Maggie said quietly. I haven't changed anything since he died. Claire turned to look at her. In 20 years, I couldn't. It felt like erasing him. And you're willing to change it now for Tyler. Maggie looked at the room, at the shrine to her grief, at the physical manifestation of her inability to move forward. Then she looked at Tyler standing in the doorway, with those blue eyes so like Tommy's and yet entirely his own. Yes, Maggie said. Tommy would want someone to use his room. He was generous like that, always sharing his toys, his space, his love. She walked to the shelf and picked up a baseball glove, leather cracked with age. He'd want Tyler to have this, to have all of it. Tyler stepped into the room hesitantly. This was your son's room. Yes, and now if you want it, it's yours. Tyler looked at the trophies, the model planes, the bed. I don't want to take his things. You're not taking them, sweetheart. I'm giving them to you. There's a difference. Ray and Beckett were already moving, taking down dusty posters, opening windows to let fresh air in. Claire watched them work, watched Maggie hand Tyler the baseball glove, watched the boy hold it carefully, reverently, like the precious gift it was. You have until tomorrow morning to make this room appropriate for an 8-year-old boy, Claire said. New bedding, age-appropriate decorations. I'll need to see school enrollment plans, medical care arrangements, a daily schedule. You'll have everything, Maggie promised. Claire made notes on her tablet, took photos, asked questions about Maggie's work schedule, her finances, her support system. Through it all, Tyler stayed close, watching everything with those careful eyes. When the assessment was done, Claire stood in the living room and looked at Maggie. Off the record, I want this to work. I do. Tyler clearly feels safe with you. And God knows the foster system is overburdened. But my supervisor is going to fight this. She sees you as an unstable, grief-stricken woman using a vulnerable child to fill a hole in your life. You're going to have to prove her wrong. I will, Maggie said, whatever it takes. Claire left with promises to return in the morning before the hearing. As soon as she was gone, the club went into action. Ray and Beckett painted Tyler's room, a soft blue, sky blue, hope blue. Marcus made calls pulling together character references from business owners and community members. Diane prepped legal documents, and Maggie took Tyler shopping for new clothes, new sheets, new things that were his and his alone. By the time the sun set over the Bradshaw Mountains, Tyler had a room. Not Tommy's room, Tyler's room, with new blue sheets and posters Tyler had picked out himself, with clothes that fit in the dresser, with that baseball glove on the nightstand, a bridge between past and present. Maggie made dinner, real dinner, not diner food but home cooking, Spaghetti and meatballs because Tyler said it was his favorite. They ate at the small kitchen table, just the two of them, while downstairs the club cleaned the diner and made plans. After dinner, Maggie ran Tyler a bath. His first real bath in who knows how long. She gave him privacy but stood outside the door in case he needed her. When he emerged in clean pajamas with his wet hair combed back, Maggie's breath caught. He looked so young, so small, so impossibly precious. "Ready for bed?" she asked. Tyler nodded. They walked to his new room. Maggie pulled back the covers, and Tyler climbed in. She tucked the blankets around him, the way she used to tuck Tommy in. The muscle memory was still there after 20 years. "Miss Maggie." Tyler's voice was quiet in the darkened room. "Yes, sweetheart." "What happens tomorrow at the court thing?" Maggie sat on the edge of the bed. "Tomorrow we go in front of a judge. She'll listen to everyone. To the social worker, to the lawyer, to me, and then she'll decide if you can stay here while we work out all the legal stuff. What if she says no? Then we appeal, we fight, we do whatever we have to do. But Tyler, I want you to know something." Maggie took his hand. "Even if they make you go somewhere else for a little while, I'm not giving up. Do you understand? This isn't temporary for me. This isn't charity. You're not a project. You're—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You're a gift, a second chance, and I don't waste second chances." Tyler's eyes filled with tears. "Nobody ever wanted me to stay before." "Well, I do. I very much do. Even though I'm not Tommy." The question pierced Maggie's heart. "You're not Tommy, and I'm not trying to make you into Tommy. You're Tyler. You're your own person with your own story. But maybe my heart is big enough for both of you. Maybe I can love the son I lost and the son I found, both at the same time." "Is that what I am?" Tyler whispered in. "The son you found." Maggie felt tears streaming down her face. "If you want to be." Tyler was quiet for a moment. Then he said in a voice so small and hopeful it broke Maggie's heart, "I want to be." Maggie leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Then that's what you are. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow's a big day." She stood to leave, but Tyler's hand caught hers. "Can you stay? Just until I fall asleep?" "Of course." Maggie sat in the chair beside the bed, the same chair she used to sit in when Tommy was sick, when she'd watch him sleep and pray for miracles that never came. But tonight felt different. Tonight she wasn't watching death approach. She was watching life begin again. Tyler's breathing evened out. His small hand relaxed in hers. And Maggie sat in the dark, keeping vigil over this child who'd walked 100 miles to survive. This boy who'd chosen her, this second chance she never thought she'd get. Downstairs, she could hear the low murmur of voices. The club still there, still watching, still ready to fight for her and Tyler. It had been so long since Maggie felt like she belonged to something bigger than grief. So long since she felt purpose beyond survival. Tomorrow they'd face a judge, face a system that didn't move fast or take chances, face people who would question her motives and her ability and her mental state. But tonight in this room with this sleeping child, Maggie felt something she hadn't felt in 20 years. She felt like a mother again, and she'd be damned if anyone took that away from her. Morning came too fast and not fast enough. Maggie woke at 4, her body refusing to pretend it could sleep when everything depended on the next few hours. She lay in the darkness of her bedroom, listening to the silence of the apartment. No, not complete silence. From the room next door came the soft sound of Tyler's breathing. Steady, safe, here, for now. Maggie rose and dressed in the dark. Not her usual diner uniform of jeans and an apron. Today she wore the black dress she kept for funerals. The one she'd worn to Patrick's service 15 years ago. To Tommy's service before that. Today she was burying her old life, the half-life she'd been living. Today she was fighting for a new one. She checked on Tyler before heading downstairs. He was still asleep, curled on his side with one hand tucked under his cheek. The baseball glove sat on the nightstand where he'd placed it before bed. Tommy's glove. Tyler's now, a bridge between grief and hope. The diner kitchen was already lit when Maggie descended the stairs. Marcus sat at the prep counter with a cup of coffee and a laptop. He looked up when she entered. Couldn't sleep either. His voice was rough with exhaustion. Too much at stake. Maggie poured herself coffee. What are you doing? Compiling everything for Diane, character references, financial records, background checks. We've got 83 letters of support already. Everyone from the mayor to the pastor at First Methodist to the guy who delivers your meat. 83 people. Maggie felt something catch in her throat. I had no idea. You've been feeding this town for 35 years, Maggie. People remember kindness, especially the quiet kind that doesn't ask for anything back. Marcus closed the laptop. How's Tyler? Still sleeping, first real sleep he's had in probably a month. She sat down across from him. Marcus, what if this doesn't work? What if the judge says no? Then we appeal, fight harder. But Maggie, you need to prepare yourself. Even if today goes well, this is just the beginning. The scrutiny you're going to face, the questions, the doubt. People are going to say things, ugly things, about you, about your grief, about whether you're stable enough for this. I know. Maggie wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. But I also know that for the first time in 20 years, I woke up with a reason to get out of bed, a reason beyond habit and obligation. Tyler needs me, and God help me, I need him too. Marcus reached across the counter and squeezed her hand. Then we fight. By 6, the apartment was chaos of the productive kind. Ray arrived with paint and brushes determined to finish the last details in Tyler's room. Beckett brought breakfast burritos and orange juice. Diane showed up with a briefcase full of documents and a game plan. And one by one, members of the club filtered in until the diner was full of people united in a single purpose. Tyler woke to the sound of voices and activity. Maggie found him standing in his doorway, looking overwhelmed by the commotion. Morning, sweetheart. She knelt to his level. I know it's loud, but everyone here is helping. Helping us, is that okay? Tyler nodded, his hair stuck up in the back. Sleep had left creases on his face. He looked so young, so vulnerable. Maggie wanted to wrap him up and hide him from everything coming. Let's get you fed and dressed. We have to be at the courthouse at 9. Tyler's face went pale. I have to go. Yes, honey, the judge will want to talk to you, but I'll be right there, and Diane and Marcus. You're not alone in this. They ate breakfast there in a quiet corner while the club worked around them. Tyler picked at his food. Anxiety had stolen his appetite. Maggie didn't push. She remembered this feeling, the sick dread of waiting for adults to decide your fate. At 7:30, Claire Winters arrived to do her final assessment before the hearing. She walked through the apartment with fresh eyes noting every change. Tyler's room was transformed. Fresh paint, new curtains, toys on the shelves mixed with Tommy's old treasures. A space that honored the past while making room for the present. You've done good work here, Claire said to Maggie. The room looks appropriate, welcoming. Thank you. Claire knelt beside Tyler. How did you sleep last night? Good. Tyler's voice was quiet. Miss Maggie stayed until I fell asleep. And do you still want to stay here with Miss Maggie? Yes. Even if it means following rules, going to school, all the things that come with living in a home. Tyler looked at Maggie, then back at Claire. I want to stay. Claire made notes. When she finished, she pulled Maggie aside. I'm going to recommend emergency temporary custody, but you need to know that my supervisor, Victoria Aldrich, will be at the hearing, and she's already made her position clear. She thinks this situation is psychologically unhealthy, that you're using Tyler to replace your dead son. I'm not, Maggie said firmly. I believe you. But Victoria's concerns aren't baseless. You have to understand how this looks. A grief-stricken widow. A child who could be your deceased son's twin. The attachment forming at lightning speed. These are all red flags in our field. What do you suggest I do? Be honest. Don't minimize your grief, but don't make this about Tommy. Make it about Tyler. About what he needs. About what you can provide. Claire checked her watch. I have to file my report. I'll see you at the courthouse. After Claire left, Diane gathered everyone in the diner. 75 bikers. One widow, one scared child, one lawyer who looked far more confident than Maggie felt. Here's how this works, Diane addressed the group. Judge Holloway will hear from CPS, from me, and from anyone else she deems relevant. This isn't a trial, it's an emergency hearing to determine temporary placement pending a full investigation. Our goal is simple. Prove that Tyler is safe with Maggie and that removing him would cause more harm than good. What's our biggest obstacle? Marcus asked. Victoria Aldrich. She's built a career on protecting children from unstable placements. In her view, Maggie's grief makes her unstable. The speed of this attachment makes it suspect, and the involvement of a motorcycle club makes it inappropriate. Ray spoke up from the back. So we're a liability. In Victoria's eyes, yes. But we're going to flip that narrative. You're not a motorcycle club. You're a community support network. You're proof that Maggie isn't alone, that she has resources and backup and people who will step up when needed. Diane looked at each of them. But you have to look the part, so lose the colors for today. Business casual if you have it. We need the judge to see citizens, not stereotypes. Maggie watched as the club members nodded and dispersed to change clothes. These men and women who wore their patches with pride were willing to set them aside for her, for Tyler. The weight of that sacrifice settled in her chest. By 8:15, they were ready. Tyler wore new jeans and a button-up shirt Beckett had bought. His hair was combed, his face scrubbed clean. He looked like any other 8-year-old boy heading to church or a family gathering, not a child who'd spent a month on the streets eating from dumpsters. Maggie straightened his collar. You doing okay? I'm scared. Me too, sweetheart. But we're scared together. And that makes it a little less scary, doesn't it? Tyler nodded. He slipped his small hand into hers, and together they walked out to face whatever came next. The Yavapai County Courthouse sat on the plaza like it had for over a century, stone and history and the weight of 1,000 decisions that changed lives. Maggie had walked past this building almost every day for 35 years, had barely given it a thought. Now it loomed like a judgment waiting to fall. The courtroom was already filling when they arrived. Word had spread through Prescott faster than Maggie expected. Shop owners she'd fed for decades, waitresses who'd worked for her, customers who knew her only as the quiet woman who remembered their orders and never forgot a birthday. They'd come to support her, to be witnesses to whatever happened next. Victoria Aldrich sat at the front with Claire Winters and another CPS representative. Victoria was exactly what Maggie expected, 55 and sharp-edged. Her suit was immaculate, her hair pulled back in a tight bun that suggested nothing frivolous was tolerated. She looked at Maggie with clinical assessment. Not unkind, but not warm either. This was a woman who measured everything against protocol and found most things wanting. Diane guided Maggie and Tyler to seats at the front. Marcus and Ray sat directly behind them. The rest of the club filled the gallery, all in civilian clothes, all silent and respectful, all radiating the same quiet determination. At 9 o'clock sharp, the bailiff called for everyone to rise. Judge Margaret Holloway entered from her chambers. She was in her early 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen everything twice. She settled into her chair and surveyed the packed courtroom. This is an emergency hearing regarding the temporary placement of Tyler James Brennan, age 8, currently without legal guardians. Her voice carried authority earned over decades on the bench. I've reviewed the preliminary reports from Child Protective Service. I understand there's some disagreement about the appropriate placement. Victoria Aldrich stood. Your Honor, if I may address the court. Proceed, Ms. Aldrich. Victoria moved to the podium with the confidence of someone who'd argued hundreds of cases. Your Honor, while we appreciate Mrs. Sullivan's compassion in this situation, we have serious concerns about this proposed placement. Ms. Sullivan is a 58-year-old widow who lost her only child 20 years ago. She's had no child-rearing experience since then. She operates a business that requires her attention 6 days a week. And most concerning, Tyler bears a striking resemblance to her deceased son. We believe Ms. Sullivan's emotional attachment is based on grief rather than what's genuinely best for this child. Maggie felt each word like a physical blow. Victoria wasn't wrong about the facts, but she was wrong about what they meant. Furthermore, Victoria continued, Ms. Sullivan's primary support system consists of members of a motorcycle club. While I'm sure these individuals mean well, they do not constitute an appropriate environment for raising a vulnerable child who's experienced significant trauma. Judge Holloway made notes. Ms. Mercer, I assume you have a response. Diane stood. Your Honor, Ms. Aldrich is correct that Ms. Sullivan has experienced loss. What she fails to acknowledge is that this experience makes Ms. Sullivan uniquely qualified to help a child who's also experienced devastating loss. Tyler's mother died a month ago. He's been living on the streets afraid of a system that's supposed to protect him. In Miss Sullivan, he's found the first adult who saw him as a person rather than a problem. The speed of the attachment is precisely the concern, Victoria interjected. The speed of the attachment is evidence of desperate need meeting compassionate response, Diane countered. Your Honor, I have 83 letters of character reference for Ms. Sullivan. Business owners, clergy, community leaders, all attesting to her stability, her generosity, and her fitness as a guardian. I also have medical records showing that Tyler received more comprehensive care in 24 hours with Ms. Sullivan than he received in a month on the streets. Judge Holloway held up a hand. I'll review the letters, but first I want to hear from the caseworker who conducted the home assessment, Ms. Winters. Claire stood and approached the witness stand. She was sworn in and took her seat. Ms. Winters, you conducted the preliminary home assessment. What did you find? Claire opened her folder. I found a 2-bedroom apartment above Ms. Sullivan's business. Clean, safe, appropriate. 1 bedroom has been converted for Tyler's use. It previously belonged to Ms. Sullivan's deceased son, but has been updated with age-appropriate furnishings and belongings. In your assessment of Ms. Sullivan's fitness as a guardian, Claire took a breath. Your Honor, my professional opinion is that Ms. Sullivan is capable of providing appropriate care. She demonstrated quick thinking in securing medical attention and legal representation for Tyler. She has stable finances and a support network. My concerns minimal as they are centered around the emotional aspects Ms. Aldrich mentioned. The similarity between Tyler and Ms. Sullivan's deceased son, the rapid attachment. But you still recommend temporary placement with her. I do, with conditions, regular check-ins, mandatory counseling for both Ms. Sullivan and Tyler, ongoing monitoring. But yes, I believe Tyler is safer and better served staying with Ms. Sullivan than entering the foster system at this time. Victoria stood again. Your Honor, I must object. Ms. Winters is allowing emotion to cloud her professional judgment. My judgment is based on what I observed, Claire said firmly. A child who feels safe for the first time in a month. An adult willing to completely restructure her life to provide care. And a community rallying to support them both. Judge Holloway studied both women. Ms. Winters, you're aware that your supervisor disagrees with your recommendation. I am, Your Honor. And you're willing to stand by it anyway. I am. The judge made more notes. Then she looked up. I'd like to speak with Tyler. Maggie's heart stopped. Tyler's hand tightened in hers. It's okay, Maggie whispered. Just tell the truth. Tyler stood and walked to the witness stand. He looked impossibly small in the large chair. The bailiff brought over a phone book for him to sit on so he could see over the bench. The absurdity of it would have been funny in any other context, but here it was just heartbreaking. A child so small needing a phone book to be seen. Judge Holloway's expression softened when Tyler was settled. Hello, Tyler. My name is Judge Holloway. Do you know why you're here today? To see if I can stay with Miss Maggie. Tyler's voice was quiet but steady. That's right, and I need to ask you some questions so I can make the best decision. Okay. Tyler nodded. Tyler, how long have you known Miss Sullivan? Since yesterday morning. She found me in the dumpster. And in that time, has she treated you well? Yes, ma'am. She gave me food and cleaned my feet and got me clothes and a bed. Do you feel safe with her? Yes. Why? Tyler thought about it. Because she's sad like me. She understands what it's like when someone you love dies. The courtroom went very quiet. Can you explain what you mean? Judge Holloway asked gently. Miss Maggie's son died a long time ago. She still misses him. I can tell, but she doesn't try to make me be him. She just understands that I miss my mom. Nobody else understands that. What about foster care, Tyler? A family who could take care of you. Tyler's face closed off. Foster families don't really want you. They just get paid to keep you. My mom told me about it. She grew up in foster care. She said some people were nice, but most just wanted the money. And you think Ms. Sullivan wants you for a different reason? She doesn't get paid. She just wants me. How do you know that? Tyler looked directly at Judge Holloway. Because she cried when she found me. Real crying. Like it hurt her that I was in the trash. Nobody else cried. Maggie felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't try to hide them. Judge Holloway was quiet for a moment. One more question, Tyler. If I let you stay with Ms. Sullivan, you'll have to follow rules. Go to school, do homework. All the things children do. Can you handle that? Yes, ma'am. Even if it's hard. I walked 100 miles. I can do hard things. Something shifted in the courtroom. Maggie felt it. The way Tyler's simple honesty cut through all the legal arguments and professional concerns. Here was a child who'd survived the unsurvivable, and he was asking for the chance to stop surviving and start living. Judge Holloway dismissed Tyler, and he returned to sit beside Maggie. The judge shuffled papers, made notes. The silence stretched. Finally, she spoke. I've heard compelling arguments from both sides. Ms. Aldrich, your concerns are noted and valid. Rapid attachments formed in crisis can be unstable. Grief can cloud judgment, and unconventional support systems require scrutiny. Maggie's heart sank. However, Judge Holloway continued, I'm also persuaded by Mr. Winter's assessment and by what I observed from Tyler himself. This child has been failed by every system meant to protect him. His mother died and he ended up sleeping in garbage. That is unacceptable. She looked directly at Maggie. Ms. Sullivan, stand, please. Maggie stood on shaking legs. I'm granting emergency temporary custody of Tyler Brennan to you for a period of 6 months. During that time, you will comply with all CPS requirements, weekly home visits, mandatory family counseling, individual therapy for Tyler to process his trauma. You will enroll him in school within 1 week. You will provide regular medical care, and you will maintain appropriate boundaries and stability. Maggie couldn't breathe. 6 months. She had 6 months. This custody is conditional, Judge Holloway continued. Any indication that Tyler's well-being is compromised, any sign of instability, and he will be removed immediately. Ms. Aldrich will conduct monthly reviews. At the end of 6 months, we will reconvene to determine whether this placement should become permanent. Do you understand these conditions? Yes, Your Honor. Maggie's voice cracked. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Raising a traumatized child isn't easy. Doing it under CPS scrutiny is harder. You're going to be questioned and doubted and watched constantly. Can you handle that? Yes, Your Honor. Judge Holloway's expression softened slightly. Then I wish you luck, both of you. She banged her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. The courtroom erupted, not in chaos, but in quiet celebration. People hugging, crying, the club members surrounding Maggie and Tyler like a protective wall. Diane was smiling. Claire looked relieved. Even some of the court staff were wiping their eyes. Only Victoria Aldrich sat unmoved. She gathered her papers with precise movements and approached Maggie. Ms. Sullivan, I want to be very clear. I will be watching. Every visit, every report, every interaction. I don't believe this is the right placement, and I will be looking for any justification to remove Tyler from your care. I suggest you be perfect. I'll do my best, Maggie said evenly. Your best better be flawless. Victoria turned and left. Marcus appeared at Maggie's side. Charming woman. She's doing her job, protecting Tyler. We're protecting Tyler. She's protecting her protocols. But Marcus let it go. You did good, Maggie. Really good. Tyler tugged on Maggie's hand. Does this mean I get to stay? Maggie knelt down and pulled him into a hug. For 6 months, and then if we do everything right, forever. Forever, Tyler's voice was muffled against her shoulder. Forever. The celebration continued outside the courthouse, but Maggie was already thinking ahead. 6 months, 180 days to prove she could do this, to prove Victoria wrong and Claire right, to show that grief and love could coexist, that broken people could still be good parents. Ray pulled her aside as the crowd dispersed. What do you need? Everything. School enrollment, a therapist who works with traumatized kids, a schedule that works around the diner, help with transportation since I can't close the restaurant every time Tyler needs something. We'll handle it. Beck's sister-in-law is a child psychologist. Marcus knows someone at the elementary school, and you've got 75 people who can drive Tyler places. You're not doing this alone. I know, Maggie looked at Tyler, who was showing Beckett something on his phone. What if I mess this up, Ray? You won't. How do you know? Because you love him, not the idea of him, not what he represents. Him, Tyler, that scared brave kid who chose you. Love like that doesn't mess up. Ray squeezed her shoulder. Trust yourself, Maggie. We do. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of appointments and adjustments. Tyler started third grade at Mile High Elementary. The first day, Maggie walked him to his classroom and met his teacher, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, who promised to watch for signs of trauma or struggle. Tyler clung to Maggie's hand. What if the other kids don't like me? Then they're missing out on knowing a very brave boy. Maggie kissed his forehead. But I think they'll like you just fine. She was right. By the end of the first week, Tyler had made 2 friends. Boys who didn't care that he'd been homeless, or that his mom was dead, or that he lived above a diner with a widow and 75 honorary uncles. They just cared that he was good at kickball and shared his snacks. Therapy started the following Monday. Dr. Sarah Mitchell specialized in childhood trauma. She met with Tyler twice a week and Maggie once. The sessions were hard. Tyler had nightmares, panic attacks when Maggie was out of sight, moments of rage and grief that exploded without warning. But slowly progress emerged. Tyler started talking about his mother without breaking down, started sleeping through the night more often than not, started trusting that when Maggie said she'd be there, she would be. The weekly CPS visits were harder. Claire came every Tuesday at 3. She interviewed Tyler privately, inspected the apartment, reviewed school reports and therapy notes. She was kind but thorough, and she reported everything to Victoria. Victoria herself came for the monthly reviews. She was colder than Claire, more clinical. She questioned everything. Why was Tyler's bedtime 8:30 instead of 8? Why did Maggie let him help in the diner kitchen? Why were there so many bikers around? Maggie answered every question patiently, explained her reasoning, provided documentation, remained calm even when Victoria's implications stung. After the second monthly visit, Victoria pulled Maggie aside. "You're doing better than I expected. Thank you." That wasn't a compliment. "I expected you to fail. The fact that you haven't yet doesn't mean you won't." Victoria's eyes were hard. "Grief is tricky. It can hide. Wait, come back when you think you are past it, and when it does, you might take Tyler down with you." "That won't happen." "You can't promise that." "Maybe not, but I can promise to get help if I need it. To prioritize Tyler's needs over my own feelings. To be the mother he deserves." "We'll see." Victoria left without another word. November became December. Thanksgiving came, and Maggie closed the diner for the first time in 20 years. The club organized a massive dinner at their clubhouse. 75 bikers and their families. Tyler sat between Maggie and Marcus, eating turkey and laughing at Ray's terrible jokes, looking like he'd always belonged there. That night after Tyler was asleep, Maggie stood in front of Tommy's photo. She'd moved it to the living room, made space for Tyler's school pictures beside it. 2 boys, both 8, both hers. "I think you'd like him," she whispered to Tommy's frozen smile. "He's brave like you, kind like you. He laughs at the same dumb jokes you used to love." She paused, waiting for guilt that didn't come, waiting to feel like she was betraying Tommy's memory. But all she felt was peace. "I'm not replacing you. I could never replace you. But maybe I'm honoring you. By loving another child who needs it. By being the mom you deserved, but I couldn't save you to be for long enough." Her voice broke. "I hope that's okay. I hope you understand." The photo didn't answer, but Maggie didn't need it to. She knew somehow that Tommy would approve, that he'd want her to live again, to love again, to find purpose beyond grief. December brought Christmas. Maggie and Tyler decorated the apartment together. He'd never had a real Christmas tree before, never hung stockings or baked cookies or believed in anything magical. Maggie made it all happen, enlisted the club to help string lights and shop for presents and create the kind of holiday a child should have. Christmas morning, Tyler woke to find presents under the tree. Not expensive things, but thoughtful things. Books and puzzles and a new baseball glove to replace the old one that was falling apart. And one gift from Maggie that made him cry. A photo album, empty pages waiting to be filled. "For our memories," Maggie explained. "Starting now, Our family, our story. Tyler threw his arms around her neck. Best Christmas ever. It was Maggie's best Christmas in 20 years. But January brought complications. A newspaper article appeared in the Prescott Courier. Local widow's unusual custody arrangement raises questions. The article quoted anonymous sources calling the situation concerning, suggesting Maggie was unstable, that the club's involvement was inappropriate, that Tyler was being used to fill a void. The article went viral in the small-town way things do. Suddenly, Maggie faced whispers at the grocery store, awkward silences when she entered a room, parents at Tyler's school pulling their children aside when he approached. Tyler came home from school one day with red eyes. The kids were saying things. What kind of things? That you're crazy, that you're just pretending to want me, that the bikers are dangerous. He looked up at her with devastated eyes. Are those things true? Maggie pulled him close. No, sweetheart. People are afraid of what they don't understand. They see me and you, and they don't fit us into their boxes of how families should look. So they make up stories. But what if they're right? What if you do get tired of me? Tyler, look at me. She lifted his chin. I will never get tired of you. Never. You are not a replacement for Tommy. You're not a charity project. You're my son. And that's forever. I promise on everything I have, on Tommy's memory, on my own life. You're mine and I'm yours, and nothing anyone says can change that. But the whispers didn't stop. They grew. And when Victoria heard about the article, she called an emergency review. They met in Victoria's office. Cold gray walls and fluorescent lights. Victoria sat behind her desk with Claire beside her and a file folder thick with reports. Ms. Sullivan, I've been reviewing your case in light of recent public attention. Victoria's tone was professional but sharp. There are concerns being raised about your suitability. Concerns based on gossip and innuendo, Diane interjected. She'd accompanied Maggie to the meeting. Concerns based on observable patterns, rapid attachment, emotional dependence, an unconventional support system that includes known motorcycle club members. Victoria opened the folder. I've also received reports that Tyler has been helping in the diner kitchen, that he's frequently surrounded by club members, that his social circle consists primarily of adults rather than peers. He has friends at school, Maggie said, and he helps in the kitchen because he asks to, because it makes him feel useful and part of something, or because you need help and he feels obligated to provide it. That's not fair, Claire spoke up. I've observed their interactions. Tyler helps because he wants to, because it gives him structure and purpose. There's no coercion. Your observations are noted, Victoria said curtly, but the fact remains that this placement is being questioned by the community, by professionals, and frankly, by me. Maggie felt cold dread settling in her stomach. What are you saying? I'm saying that at the 6-month review, I'm going to recommend Tyler be placed into traditional foster care. This arrangement, while well-intentioned, is not in his best long-term interest. You can't do that. Maggie's voice rose. He's thriving. His grades are good. He's happy. He's healing. He's dependent on you in an unhealthy way, and you're dependent on him. Mutual dependence isn't family, it's codependence. That's not what this is. Isn't it? You lost your son and found a replacement. Tyler lost his mother and found a substitute. You're both using each other to avoid dealing with real grief. The words hit like physical blows. Maggie stood abruptly. I am dealing with grief every single day, and so is Tyler. Together, supporting each other. That's what families do. Traditional families, yes, but this isn't traditional. It's trauma bonding, and trauma bonds don't last. Diane stood too. Ms. Aldrich, unless you have concrete evidence of harm or neglect, you can't remove Tyler from a placement where he's demonstrably improving. I have evidence of questionable judgment, questionable support systems, and questionable psychological health. Victoria closed the folder. The 6-month review is in 3 weeks. I suggest you prepare for a fight because I'm not recommending permanent custody. They left the office in stunned silence. Outside, Maggie leaned against the building and tried to breathe. 6 months of work, of progress, of love, and Victoria was going to tear it apart anyway. We'll fight this, Diane said. We'll bring in expert witnesses, show Tyler's improvement, demonstrate community support. It won't matter. Maggie's voice was hollow. She's made up her mind. She thinks I'm crazy. Then we prove her wrong. But Maggie wasn't sure they could, because maybe Victoria wasn't entirely wrong. Maybe she was using Tyler, not consciously, not maliciously, but using him nonetheless, to feel like a mother again, to have purpose, to fill the void Tommy left. She went home and found Tyler doing homework at the kitchen table. He looked up with a smile that faded when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" Maggie sat down across from him. She wouldn't lie, wouldn't hide the truth even when it was hard. "The lady from CPS, Ms. Aldrich, she doesn't think you should stay here." Tyler's face went white. "Why not?" "She thinks I'm not the right person to take care of you, that this situation isn't healthy. But I'm happy here. I'm doing good in school. I have friends." Panic crept into Tyler's voice. "Tell her I'm happy." "I did, but she doesn't think happiness is enough. She thinks we're both just sad people making each other feel better instead of really healing." "Is that true?" Tyler's blue eyes searched her face. "Are you just keeping me because I make you feel better?" The question hung in the air. Maggie thought about it, really thought. Was she using Tyler? Or was this real? Was this love? Or was it grief masquerading as love? She looked at this boy across from her, at the way his hair stuck up in the back because he'd been chewing on his pencil while thinking hard about math problems, at the smudge of eraser shavings on his cheek, at the way he wore Tommy's old Cardinal sweatshirt even though it was a little big. And she knew. This wasn't about Tommy, it was about Tyler, this specific, particular, irreplaceable child who'd walked into her life and reminded her that hearts could break and still keep beating, that loss and love could coexist. That family wasn't about blood or replacement. It was about choice and commitment and showing up every day. "No," Maggie said firmly, "it's not true. I love you, Tyler, not because you fill a hole, but because you, because you're brave and kind, and you make terrible jokes like Ray, and you help old Mrs. Chen carry her groceries, and you always share your fries even when you really want them all. I love you because you're Tyler, and I would love you even if you looked nothing like Tommy. Even if I'd never had another child, I would still choose you." Tyler started crying, not sad crying, relief crying. "I love you too. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Better than anything." They held each other across the kitchen table while outside the sun set, and Prescott went about its evening, and somewhere Victoria Aldrich prepared her case to tear them apart. But here in this moment, they were family. Real family. And no amount of professional skepticism could change that truth. The fight wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. But Maggie had something now she hadn't had in 20 years. She had someone worth fighting for. And she'd be damned if she let anyone take him away. 3 weeks until the 6-month review. 3 weeks to prove that love built on loss could still be real, still be right, still be exactly what both of them needed. 3 weeks to save her son. The weeks that followed Victoria's declaration felt like walking on ice. Every step deliberate, every movement calculated. Maggie had 3 weeks until the 6-month review, and she used every one of them. February arrived with cold rain that turned Prescott's streets into rivers. Maggie woke each morning at 4, made coffee in the dark, and spent an hour preparing. Not just breakfast for the diner, preparing herself for the fight ahead, for the possibility of losing Tyler, for the reality that loving someone meant risking everything. Tyler's nightmares came back. Not every night, but often enough. Maggie would wake to the sound of his crying and find him tangled in sheets calling for his mother. She'd hold him until the terror passed, rock him like she used to rock Tommy, whisper promises she prayed she could keep. "I'm here," she'd say in the darkness. "I'm here and I'm not leaving." But Tyler knew the truth. He'd heard the conversation about Victoria, understood that adults were deciding his fate again, and the fear of being moved, of losing another home, manifested in ways that broke Maggie's heart. He started hoarding food, little things, crackers from lunch, an apple from breakfast, hiding them in his dresser drawer like he was preparing to run. Maggie found the stash during one of Claire's visits and had to explain that it was normal. Survival behavior. the body remembering hunger even when the stomach was full. "It'll fade," Dr. Mitchell assured her during one of their joint sessions, as he learns to trust that the food will always be there, that you'll always be there, but it takes time and consistency, and you can't rush healing. Maggie wanted to rush it, wanted Tyler to be obviously perfectly fine by the time Victoria came for the review, wanted proof that this placement was working. But healing didn't follow schedules. It followed its own timeline, messy and nonlinear and frustratingly slow. Tyler's grades stayed good, mostly B's with a few A's. His teacher, Mrs. Patterson, reported that he was engaged in class, made friends easily, helped other students, was kind and thoughtful and exactly the sort of child you wanted in a classroom. But there were moments that revealed the cracks. The day Tyler punched a kid who said his mom abandoned him. The afternoon he had a panic attack during a fire drill because alarms reminded him of the hospital where his mother died. The morning he refused to go to school because what if Maggie wasn't there when he got back? Each incident was documented. Each one went into the file that Victoria would review. Each one could be twisted into evidence of instability. Maggie handled them as best she could, talked Tyler through the panic, explained that hitting wasn't okay even when words hurt, reassured him daily that she wasn't going anywhere. But she could feel Victoria's shadow over everything, waiting, watching for the mistake that would justify removal. The club rallied around them. Marcus came by the diner every morning to check in. Ray drove Tyler to school when Maggie couldn't leave the breakfast rush. Beckett helped with homework. They created a network of support so complete that Tyler was never alone, never unsupervised, never in a position where Victoria could claim neglect. But support couldn't protect against everything. It was a Wednesday in late February when the school called. Maggie was in the middle of lunch prep when her phone rang. The principal's voice was careful, professional, the voice adults use when something bad has happened, but they're trying not to alarm you. "Ms. Sullivan, there's been an incident involving Tyler. Could you come to the school?" Maggie's stomach dropped. "Is he hurt?" "No, but there was an altercation. I think it's best we discuss this in person." Maggie left Ray in charge of the diner and drove to Mile High Elementary with her heart in her throat. She found Tyler sitting outside the principal's office, looking small and defiant. His knuckles were scraped, his shirt was torn, and his eyes were red from crying he was trying to pretend hadn't happened. "Tyler," Maggie knelt in front of him. "What happened?" "I didn't start it." His voice was tight, defensive. "Derek said things, mean things. I told him to stop. He wouldn't stop." Principal Hayes emerged from her office, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been running this school for 20 years. She gestured for Maggie to come inside. The story came out in pieces. Derek Thompson, a fourth grader known for testing boundaries, had been taunting Tyler at recess. Started with general teasing, escalated to specific cruelty, called Tyler's mother a junkie who OD'd and abandoned him, said Maggie was crazy and would get tired of Tyler soon, said the bikers were criminals and Tyler would end up in juvie. Tyler had asked him to stop, had walked away. But Derek followed, kept pushing. And when Derek said that Maggie only wanted Tyler because she was too broken to have a real kid, Tyler snapped, shoved Derek. Derek shoved back. They ended up on the ground trading punches before teachers separated them. "I have to suspend both boys," Principal Hayes said. "Zero tolerance policy on fighting. 3 days." Maggie nodded. Her mind was already spinning ahead. A suspension would go in the file. Victoria would see it, would use it as evidence that Tyler was becoming violent, that the placement was making him worse instead of better. "I understand," Maggie said. "Can I talk to him?" "Of course." Maggie brought Tyler back into the principal's office and closed the door. She didn't yell, didn't lecture, just sat down next to him and waited. "I'm sorry," Tyler said finally. "I know I shouldn't have hit him, but he said you were broken, and you're not. You're the best person I know." Something cracked open in Maggie's chest. This child defending her, fighting for her, willing to break rules and face consequences because someone insulted the woman who'd taken him in. "Tyler, I need you to listen to me very carefully." Maggie took his hands. What Derek said was cruel and wrong, but hitting him didn't make it less true. It just gave him power over you. Do you understand? When you let someone's words make you violent, you give them control. But he was lying about you. Was he? Am I not broken in some ways? Maggie's voice was gentle. I lost my son 20 years ago, and I'm still healing from it. That's a kind of broken. But here's what Derek doesn't understand. Broken things can still be beautiful, still be useful, still be exactly what someone needs. Tyler looked up at her with those blue eyes swimming in tears. You're what I need. And you're what I need, which is why we can't give people like Derek ammunition to use against us. We have to be smarter, better, because in 3 days there's a hearing that decides if you get to stay with me. And this suspension is going to be part of what they look at. I messed up. Tyler's voice broke. I messed everything up. No, you defended someone you love. That's not messing up. That's being human. But we have to find better ways to defend each other. Okay. Tyler nodded. They left the school together and drove home in silence. Maggie called Diane from the car. We have a problem. By the time they reached the apartment, Diane was already strategizing. It's not ideal, but it's not disastrous either. Kids fight, it's normal. We'll position it as Tyler defending his family. Show that he has healthy attachments and protective instincts. Victoria won't see it that way. No, she'll see it as evidence of instability, which is why we need to be proactive. Get Tyler into extra counseling sessions this week. Document his remorse. Show that he understands what he did wrong and is taking steps to do better. Maggie made the calls. Dr. Mitchell agreed to see Tyler 3 times that week instead of the usual 2. Tyler wrote an apology letter to Derek. Maggie set up a meeting with Derek's parents to apologize in person. They did everything right. Everything by the book. But Victoria still found out. Of course she did. She called Maggie the next morning. Ms. Sullivan, I've been informed of an incident at Tyler's school, a violent incident resulting in suspension. Yes, Tyler got into a fight. He's been disciplined appropriately and is receiving additional counseling. This is exactly the kind of behavioral regression I've been concerned about. A child who's been through trauma acting out violently suggests the current placement isn't providing adequate support. Or it suggests he's a normal 8-year-old who made a mistake. Maggie kept her voice even. Kids fight, Ms. Aldrich. It doesn't mean the world is ending. It means something when the child has a history of trauma and instability. I'm filing an emergency assessment. I'll be there this afternoon to evaluate the situation. Victoria arrived at 3 with Claire in tow. Tyler was doing homework at the kitchen table. He looked up when they entered, and Maggie saw fear flash across his face. The same fear that had been there that first morning in the dumpster. The look of a child expecting the worst because the worst kept happening. Hello, Tyler. Victoria's voice was professional. Cool. I need to ask you some questions about what happened at school. Tyler looked at Maggie. She nodded encouragement. Tell the truth, sweetheart. For 20 minutes, Victoria questioned Tyler. What led to the fight? What Derek said? Why Tyler reacted the way he did? Tyler answered honestly. Said he was wrong to hit Derek. Said he knew better. Said he was sorry. But Victoria's questions kept circling back to one thing. Why did Derek's words about Maggie make Tyler so angry? Because he was saying mean things about someone I love, Tyler said finally, and I didn't want him to. Do you love Ms. Sullivan? Yes. Why? But Tyler looked confused by the question. Because she takes care of me. Because she's nice. Because she makes me feel safe. And before Ms. Sullivan, who made you feel safe, my mom. So Ms. Sullivan is like a replacement mother. Tyler's face crumpled. She's not replacing anybody. She's just Maggie, and I love her. Victoria made notes. After Tyler was dismissed to his room, she turned to Maggie. I'm very concerned about the level of attachment here. Tyler is exhibiting signs of what we call anxious attachment. He's fearful of losing you, defensive to the point of violence. This suggests an unhealthy dependency. Or it suggests a child who's lost everything learning to trust again. Maggie fought to keep her voice calm. You're pathologizing normal bonding behavior. I'm recognizing red flags that you're too emotionally invested to see. Victoria closed her folder. Sullivan, I'm recommending at the hearing that Tyler be placed in traditional foster care. This arrangement has had 6 months to prove itself. In that time, we've seen behavioral issues, emotional dependency, and continued instability. I can't in good conscience recommend permanent custody. The words hit like bullets. Maggie felt them pierce through her carefully maintained composure. You're taking him away from me. I'm recommending placement that's in his best interest. I am his best interest, Maggie's voice rose. I'm the one who found him in garbage, who fed him and clothed him and loved him. Where were you when he was sleeping in a dumpster? Where was your precious system? The system failed him once. I won't let it fail him again by leaving him in an unstable situation. This isn't unstable. This is a family. This is a grief-stricken woman and a traumatized child enabling each other's pain. That's not family, that's codependence. Victoria stood. The hearing is in 3 days. I suggest you prepare Tyler for the transition. After Victoria left, Maggie stood in her kitchen and felt the world collapse. 6 months of work, of love, of progress. And Victoria was going to take Tyler anyway. Was going to prove that Maggie wasn't enough. That her love wasn't enough. That broken people couldn't build whole families. She found Tyler in his room, sitting on his bed, holding Tommy's old baseball glove. Tears streamed down his face. I heard, he said quietly. She's going to make me leave. Maggie sat beside him, pulled him close. Not without a fight. We still have the hearing, the judge, Diane, all the people who support us. But what if the judge agrees with her? What if they all think I should go somewhere else? Then we appeal. We fight harder. Tyler, look at me. She lifted his chin. I am not giving up on you. Do you understand? I don't care what Victoria says. I don't care what anyone says. You are my son, and I will fight for you until I have no fight left. And then I'll fight some more. Why? Tyler's voice was small. I'm not even yours. Not really. I'm just some kid you found. You are mine, not because of biology, not because a court said so, but because I chose you and you chose me. That's what makes a family. Choice, and I choose you. Every single day, I choose you. Tyler buried his face in her shoulder and sobbed. Great heaving sobs that shook his small frame. Maggie held him and cried too. Because maybe Victoria was right. Maybe they were both just broken people clinging to each other. But if that was true, what was wrong with that? Wasn't that what family did? Held each other up when the world tried to knock them down. That night after Tyler finally fell asleep, Maggie called Marcus. She's recommending removal. Marcus swore. Based on what? One school fight. Based on everything. The attachment, the dependency, the unconventional support system. She thinks we're enabling each other's trauma instead of healing it. That's bullshit. Is it? Maggie's voice broke. Marcus, what if she's right? What if I am just using Tyler to replace Tommy? What if I'm hurting him instead of helping him? Stop. Stop right now. Marcus's voice was firm. You know that's not true. I've watched you with Tyler. I've seen how you put his needs first. How you get up at night when he has nightmares. How you advocate for him at school. How you love him. That's not replacement. That's real. Then why doesn't Victoria see it? Because Victoria sees everything through the lens of protocol and procedure. She can't imagine that love built on loss can still be healthy, still be right. But you and I know different. We've both lost people, and we know that loss doesn't make you incapable of loving again. It makes you appreciate it more. Maggie wiped her eyes. The hearing's in 3 days. What do? We fight. We bring everyone who believes in you. Everyone who's seen Tyler thrive. We show the judge what Victoria refuses to see. For the next 3 days, the club mobilized like an army preparing for battle. They gathered letters of support, organized character witnesses, compiled evidence of Tyler's progress, school records showing improved grades, medical records showing weight gain and healing, photos of Tyler smiling, laughing, being a normal kid. Mrs. Patterson agreed to testify about Tyler's classroom behavior. Dr. Mitchell prepared a report on his therapeutic progress. Even Derek's parents, moved by Tyler's apology, wrote a letter saying the fight was mutual and shouldn't be held against him. The morning of the hearing, Maggie woke to find Tyler already dressed. He wore the same button-up shirt he'd worn to the first hearing 6 months ago. It fit better now. He'd grown, not just physically, in every way that mattered. Ready? She asked. No, but we're doing it anyway. Right? Right. They drove to the courthouse together. The gallery was packed again. Even more than last time. The entire club in civilian clothes. Customers from the diner. Teachers from the school. People who'd watched Tyler transform from a scared kid in a dumpster to a thriving child with a future. Victoria sat at the front with her files and her certainty. She looked at the crowd with something like disdain, as if numbers didn't matter, as if love and community support were irrelevant in the face of psychological theory. Judge Holloway entered and the room stood. 6 months ago, she'd given them a chance. Today, she would decide if that chance had been earned or wasted. We're here to review the temporary custody arrangement for Tyler Brennan. Judge Holloway's voice carried through the silent courtroom. I've read the reports from both Ms. Winters and Ms. Aldrich. I understand there's disagreement about the appropriate next steps. Victoria stood. Your Honor, I'm recommending Tyler be placed in traditional foster care. While Ms. Sullivan has provided basic needs, the psychological dynamics of this placement are concerning. Tyler exhibits anxious attachment. Ms. Sullivan shows signs of using Tyler to process unresolved grief. The recent violence at school suggests behavioral regression. I believe Tyler would be better served in a stable two-parent home with experienced foster parents. Ms. Mercer, Diane stood. Your Honor, Ms. Aldrich is cherry-picking data to support a predetermined conclusion. Yes, Tyler got in a fight. So do millions of children every year. It doesn't indicate placement failure. As for attachment, Tyler was severely neglected and traumatized. Of course, he's attached to the first person who showed him consistent care. That's not pathological. That's healing. What about the codependency concerns? If loving someone and being loved back is codependent, then every healthy family in America is codependent. Your Honor, we have reports from Tyler's teacher showing academic and social progress. We have medical records showing physical improvement. We have testimony from his therapist indicating therapeutic gains. The only person who thinks this placement is failing is Ms. Aldrich. And frankly, I believe her objections are more about ideology than evidence. Victoria's face flushed. That's completely inappropriate. Is it you've been opposed to this placement from day one? Not because of anything Ms. Sullivan did wrong, but because it doesn't fit your model of what a family should look like. Judge Holloway held up a hand. Let's focus on facts, not accusations. Ms. Winters, you've been conducting weekly visits. What's your assessment? Claire stood. Your Honor, I believe Tyler is thriving with Ms. Sullivan. Are there challenges? Yes. Trauma recovery is never linear, but I've seen consistent improvement over 6 months. Tyler has gained weight. His nightmares have decreased. He's making friends, doing well in school. He talks about his future with hope instead of fear. Those are markers of successful placement. Even with the school incident, especially with the school incident, Tyler defended someone he loves. He showed loyalty and protective instincts. Those are healthy emotional responses. And afterward, he demonstrated remorse, took responsibility, and engaged in restorative actions. That's exactly the kind of growth that we hope to see. Judge Holloway made notes. I'd like to hear from Tyler. Maggie's heart stopped. Tyler stood and walked to the witness stand. He looked terrified but determined. The bailiff brought the phone book again. Tyler sat on it and faced the judge. Hello again, Tyler. Judge Holloway's voice was gentle. How have the last 6 months been? Good. Mostly good. Tyler's voice was quiet but clear. Tell me about school. I like it. I have friends. Tommy and Jake. We play kickball at recess. I'm good at math now. Mrs. Patterson says I'm one of her best students. What about the fight? Can you tell me what happened? Tyler took a breath. Derek was saying mean things about Miss Maggie. I asked him to stop. He wouldn't. So I pushed him. And then we fought. I was wrong to do that. I should have told a teacher instead. Why did Derek's words make you so angry? Because he was lying. He said Maggie was crazy and broken, but she's not. She's the best person I know. And I didn't want him saying those things. Tyler, do you love Miss Sullivan? Yes. Why? Tyler looked at Maggie, and when he spoke, his voice was stronger. because she saved me, not just from the dumpster, from being alone, from being scared all the time. She makes me feel like I matter, like I'm not just some problem to solve. She tucks me in and helps with homework and remembers that I don't like mushrooms. She came to my school play, even though the diner was busy. She taught me how to make pancakes. She lets me keep my mom's picture by my bed and doesn't get mad when I cry about her. She's everything a mom should be. The courtroom was completely silent. Judge Holloway leaned forward. Tyler, some people think you and Ms. Sullivan need each other too much, that you're too dependent on each other. What do you think about that? Tyler thought about it. I don't know what dependent means, but I know that before Maggie, I was alone. And now I'm not. Before Maggie, I thought nobody would ever want me. And now someone does. If that's too much, then I don't understand what the right amount is supposed to be. Judge Holloway's expression softened. Thank you, Tyler. You can step down. Tyler returned to his seat beside Maggie. She squeezed his hand. Miss Sullivan, I'd like to hear from you as well. Maggie stood and approached the stand. She was sworn in and sat down. Faced the judge in the courtroom and Victoria's skeptical stare. Ms. Sullivan, Ms. Aldrich has raised concerns that you're using Tyler to replace your deceased son. How do you respond to that? Maggie had prepared for this question, had practiced her answer with Diane, but now facing it directly, she abandoned the script, decided to tell the truth. All of it, even the parts that made her vulnerable. Your Honor, Ms. Aldrich is right. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Diane's head snapped up. Even Victoria looked surprised. Tyler reminds me of Tommy. Same age, same eyes, same laugh when something really tickles him. Every time I look at Tyler, I see echoes of my son. And yes, that's part of why I wanted to help him. Why I felt such an immediate connection. Victoria leaned forward, vindication in her eyes. But here's what Mrs. Aldrich doesn't understand. Maggie's voice grew stronger. I'm not replacing Tommy with Tyler. I'm honoring Tommy by loving Tyler. My son taught me how to be a mother, how to love unconditionally, how to put someone else's needs before my own. When Tommy died, I thought those lessons died with him, that I'd never get to use them again, that being a mother was something in my past. She looked directly at Tyler. Then I found Tyler in that dumpster, and I realized Tommy's lessons weren't wasted, that I could still be a mother, not to Tommy, he's gone and nothing will bring him back, but to Tyler, this specific, particular, irreplaceable boy who needed exactly what I had to give. Ms. Sullivan, Victoria started to interrupt. I'm not finished. Maggie turned to face Victoria. You think Tyler and I are enabling each other's pain, that we're clinging to each other instead of healing. But you're wrong. We're healing because of each other. Tyler's learning that losing someone doesn't mean you stop loving. That trust can be rebuilt after it's broken. That family isn't about biology. It's about choice and commitment. She turned back to the judge. And I'm learning that my heart is bigger than I thought, that I can love the son I lost and the son I found, that grief and joy can exist in the same space, that being broken doesn't mean being useless. Sometimes broken things are exactly what someone needs because they understand what it's like to hurt. Tears streamed down Maggie's face, but she didn't wipe them away. Tyler didn't replace Tommy. He showed me that Tommy's death doesn't have to be the end of my story as a mother, that I can honor my first son by loving my second son with everything I learned from losing the first. And if that's codependent or unhealthy or whatever clinical term you want to use, then I don't care, because it's real, it's love, and it's exactly what both of us need. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of people crying. Tyler was crying. Claire was crying. Even some of the club members were wiping their eyes. Only Victoria sat unmoved, her face a mask of professional skepticism. Your Honor, Maggie continued, I'm not perfect. I'm still grieving Tommy after 20 years. I probably always will, but that doesn't make me incapable of being a good mother to Tyler. If anything, it makes me better, because I know how precious time is, how fragile life is, how important it is to show up every day and choose love even when it's hard. She paused. Tyler asked me once if I was sad that he's not Tommy, and I told him the truth. He's not Tommy, he's Tyler, and I love him for exactly who he is. not who he reminds me of, not what he represents, him. This brave, kind, resilient boy who survived things no child should survive and came out the other side still believing people could be good. Maggie looked at Judge Holloway. So yes, Ms. Aldrich is right. Tyler does remind me of Tommy, but that's not why I love him. I love him because he's Tyler. And if you take him away from me, you won't be protecting him. You'll be teaching him that love isn't enough, that survival isn't enough, that no matter how hard you try, broken people can't have whole families. And that's not a lesson any child should learn. She sat back, exhausted, exposed, everything laid bare. Judge Holloway was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Victoria. Ms. Aldrich, after hearing Ms. Sullivan's testimony, do you still recommend removal? Victoria stood. Yes, Your Honor. While I appreciate Ms. Sullivan's honesty, it confirms my concerns. This placement is based more on Ms. Sullivan's emotional needs than Tyler's best interests. I disagree. The voice came from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. An older woman in her 70s stood. Maggie recognized her. Helen Morrison, Tyler's tutor. Your Honor, may I speak? Helen asked. Are you a witness for the defense? I wasn't planning to be, but after hearing Miss Aldrich, I feel I must. I've been working with Tyler 3 times a week for 5 months. I've watched him transform from a boy who couldn't read at grade level to one who's above it. And I've watched Ms. Sullivan show up to every single tutoring session, asking questions about how to help, practicing with him at home, celebrating every small victory. Helen walked forward. I've been a teacher for 40 years. I've seen hundreds of families. And I can tell you that what Miss Sullivan and Tyler have is real. It's not perfect. It's messy and complicated and built on shared pain. But it's love, real love. The kind that shows up, the kind that stays. And frankly, that's rarer than you'd think. She turned to Victoria. You want to take Tyler from this because it doesn't fit your textbook model of family. But families come in all forms, and sometimes the most unconventional ones are the ones that work best. Helen sat down, and then another person stood. Howard from the hardware store. Your Honor, I'd like to speak too. For the next 30 minutes, people testified. Customers from the diner, Tyler's teacher, parents of his friends, the pastor from First Methodist. One by one, they told stories of watching Maggie and Tyler together, of seeing love in action, of witnessing a family being built brick by brick through choice and commitment. Through it all, Victoria sat rigid, unmoved by testimony or tears. When the last witness finished, she stood. Your Honor, with respect to everyone who spoke, anecdotes aren't evidence. I deal in data, in psychological research, in outcomes, and the data shows that rapid attachments formed in crisis are often unstable. That children who exhibit anxious attachment patterns are at risk for future relationship difficulties. That placements involving significant age differences between guardian and child face unique challenges. So do placements involving foster care, Diane countered. The data also shows that children who age out of the foster system face higher rates of homelessness, incarceration, and mental health issues. Tyler isn't a statistic, Ms. Aldrich. He's a child, and he's thriving where he is. Judge Holloway held up her hand. I've heard enough. I'm going to take a short recess to review my notes. We'll reconvene in 15 minutes. The courtroom emptied into the hallway. Tyler clung to Maggie's hand. What's she going to say? I don't know, baby, but whatever happens, we're together. Okay, no matter what, we're together. Marcus appeared with coffee. You did good in there, Maggie, real good. I just told the truth. Sometimes that's all you can do. The 15 minutes felt like hours. Finally, they were called back. Everyone took their seats. Judge Holloway entered and the room rose and sat in perfect silence. I've presided over family court for 25 years, the judge began. I've seen thousands of cases, placed hundreds of children, and I can tell you that there's no perfect formula for determining what makes a good home. We have guidelines, best practices, research. But at the end of the day, every case is unique. Every child is different. And sometimes the right answer isn't the one that looks right on paper. She looked at Victoria. Ms. Aldrich, your concerns are noted. You're right that this placement is unconventional. You're right that rapid attachments can be unstable. You're right that we should scrutinize situations involving significant grief. Maggie's heart sank. But you're wrong that this placement is failing. The evidence shows otherwise. Tyler has gained weight. His grades have improved. He's making friends. He's engaging in therapy. He's developing healthy coping mechanisms. Yes, he got in a fight, but he also took responsibility for it. That's not behavioral regression. That's age-appropriate development. Judge Holloway turned to Maggie. Was das? Sullivan, your honesty today was remarkable. You didn't try to hide your grief or pretend it doesn't influence your relationship with Tyler. Instead, you showed how it informs it, how it makes you a better mother because you understand loss, because you don't take love for granted. She paused. I've seen people who look perfect on paper destroy children through neglect or abuse, and I've seen unconventional families create miracles. What matters isn't how a family looks from the outside, it's what happens inside. Whether a child feels safe, loved, valued, whether they're given the tools to heal and grow. Judge Holloway looked at Tyler, and it's clear to me that Tyler has all of those things with Miss Sullivan. Hope surged in Maggie's chest. Therefore, I'm granting full permanent custody of Tyler James Brennan to Margaret Ann Sullivan. The courtroom erupted, people cheering, crying, hugging. Tyler launched himself at Maggie, and she caught him, held him while he sobbed into her shoulder. Furthermore, Judge Holloway continued over the noise, I'm approving a petition for legal name change. Tyler, do you understand what that means? Tyler lifted his tear-stained face. No, ma'am. It means your name would change from Tyler James Brennan to Tyler James Brennan Sullivan, keeping your birth mother's name but adding Miss Sullivan's, making you officially legally her son. Is that something you want? Tyler looked at Maggie. Can I? If you want to, sweetheart. I want to. Tyler turned back to the judge. I want to be Tyler Sullivan. Then that's what you'll be. Judge Holloway banged her gavel. Permanent custody granted. Name change approved. This case is closed. Victoria stood abruptly and left the courtroom without a word. Claire came over with tears in her eyes. Congratulations, Maggie. You did it. We did it. Thank you for believing in us. The celebration spilled out of the courthouse and into the plaza. 75 bikers cheering, townspeople congratulating. A spontaneous parade forming as the club fired up their motorcycles and offered Tyler and Maggie a ride. Marcus brought his bike around. It had a sidecar attachment he'd installed just for this. Tyler climbed in, grinning from ear to ear. Maggie settled beside him, and they rode through downtown Prescott with 74 other bikes behind them. Past the diner, past the school, past all the places that made up their life together. People stopped to watch. Some waved, some stared, some probably whispered about the crazy widow and her biker family. But Maggie didn't care. She had her son. Really, truly, legally, her son. And nothing else mattered. The party at the clubhouse lasted all day. Food and music and laughter. Tyler was passed from biker to biker, each one congratulating him. Ray gave him a leather jacket, child-sized with a patch that said, honorary member. Beckett taught him a complicated handshake. Helen brought a cake decorated with books because Tyler loved reading now. As the sun set, Maggie found a quiet corner and watched Tyler playing with the club kids. Running around, laughing, being 9 years old without the weight of survival on his shoulders. Marcus sat down beside her. How are you feeling? Like I can breathe for the first time in 6 months, maybe in 20 years. She turned to him. Thank you for everything, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. You did the hard work, Maggie. I just provided backup. Good backup. She smiled. The best. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Marcus said, Tommy would be proud of you, you know. Maggie felt tears prick her eyes. You think so? I know so. You took everything he taught you about love and you gave it to another kid who needed it. That's not betrayal, that's legacy. The words settled in Maggie's chest. Legacy. Tommy's legacy wasn't his death. It was what Maggie built from the ruins of it. The love she still had to give. The strength she didn't know she possessed. The family she created from loss and hope and fierce determination. That night after the party wound down and they returned to the apartment above the diner, Maggie tucked Tyler into bed. His bed, in his room, in their home, forever. Miss Maggie, Tyler's voice was sleepy. Yes, sweetheart. Can I ask you something? Anything. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Then, can I call you Mom? The question hung in the air. The question Maggie had been waiting for, hoping for, afraid to push for. Tyler, her voice broke. I would be so honored. Even though I'm not Tommy, because you're Tyler, because you're my son, not my replacement son, not my second choice son, my son, period. Tyler smiled, that gap-toothed smile that reminded her of Tommy, but was entirely his own. Okay, good night, Mom. Good night, my brave, beautiful boy. Maggie stood to leave, but Tyler called her back. Mom, yes. Thank you for not walking past the dumpster, for stopping, for seeing me. Maggie knelt beside his bed and took his hand. Thank you for giving me a reason to keep going, for reminding me that my heart still works, for being you. She kissed his forehead and left the room. But she didn't go far. She stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to Tyler's breathing, even out into sleep. Her son's breathing. In her home. Forever. In the living room, Maggie stopped in front of the photos on the mantel. She'd rearranged them after the hearing. Tommy's photo still there, still honored, still loved. But next to it now was Tyler's school picture from this year. Both boys smiling. Both 8 when the photos were taken. Both hers. Tommy, she whispered to the older photo, I want you to meet your brother. His name is Tyler. He's brave and kind, and he makes terrible jokes like Uncle Ray. I think you'd like him. I think you'd be friends. She paused. I love you both so much, and I know that's okay, that my heart is big enough for both of you, that I don't have to choose between honoring your memory and building a future with Tyler. I can do both. I'm doing both. Maggie touched both photos gently. Then she went to the kitchen and made tea, sat at the table in the quiet apartment, her family's apartment. Tomorrow she'd wake up at 4 and open the diner. Tyler would wake up at 6 and she'd make him breakfast. He'd go to school and she'd pack his lunch with a note that said, love you, kiddo. He'd come home and do homework while she finished the dinner shift. They'd eat together, talk about their days, be a family, normal, ordinary, beautiful. For the first time in 20 years, Maggie was looking forward to tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days stretching ahead. Not because she'd forgotten the past, but because she'd learned to carry it forward, to let grief and joy exist together, to build something new from the ruins of loss. She thought about Victoria's accusations, about codependency and unhealthy attachment, and using Tyler to fill a void. Maybe there was truth in some of it. Maybe their bond was stronger because they'd both known loss. Maybe they did need each other in ways that textbooks would flag as concerning. But Maggie had learned something over these 6 months. Love wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, being honest, doing the work. And sometimes the love built on shared pain was the strongest kind, because it was forged in fire, tested by loss, proven through the hardest thing either of them had faced. She finished her tea and went to bed. Tomorrow was the first day of the rest of their lives. No more temporary placement, no more conditional custody. No more scrutiny from people who measured love in clinical terms. Just family. Just home. Just 2 broken people who'd found wholeness in each other. And that was more than enough. It was everything. In his room, Tyler slept peacefully. No nightmares tonight. No fear of being moved. No anxiety about tomorrow. Just the deep, restful sleep of a child who knows he's safe. Who knows he's loved. Who knows he's home. And in the kitchen, 2 photos sat side by side on the counter where Maggie would see them every morning when she made coffee. Tommy's smile frozen in time. Tyler's smile growing brighter each day. Not replacement, not forgetting. Just love expanding to hold both joy and sorrow. Both past and present. Both the sun she lost and the sun she found. The morning sun would rise over the Bradshaw Mountains in a few hours. Prescott would wake up. The diner would open. Life would go on in all its ordinary, extraordinary glory. And Margaret Sullivan, who'd spent 20 years existing rather than living, would be there to meet it. Not alone anymore, not half alive anymore, but fully present, fully engaged, fully and completely a mother again. Because sometimes the family you find is the family you need. Sometimes the most unlikely love stories are the truest ones. And sometimes when you stop walking past the pain and start walking through it, you find exactly what you've been missing on the other side. Tyler Brennan Sullivan slept. His mother watched over him. And somewhere Maggie liked to think Tommy smiled too. Happy that his mother was happy. Happy that another boy got the love Tommy had known so briefly. Happy that his death had somehow impossibly led to life. And in the Copper Cup Diner in a small town in Arizona, a family built on loss and hope and fierce love began their forever.